we'll get where we get. Given that parking demand is increasing in the city, it's nice for me and you all that in the end there tends to be more revenue rather than less, but that's not what's driving this. It is in fact the data. And the point I was really emphasizing is that because of that, we've gotten acceptance. We'd certainly work with the communities, before we move in and install meters and establish rates. There's an effort to do the outreach, explain why we got there, why the data are what, the data that we're using, and the plan to implement. But that has been a success really over and over.
Ben, I have to jump in and agree for the most part with everything that's been said so far, Mike, and I really do appreciate that data-driven approach, but I do think that there are some exceptions to that. We know we've got major occupancy issues in places where we've got nightlife, where we don't charge for parking after 8 p.m., Pioneer Square, Capitol Hill, Belltown,
The mayor's
Ballard.
proposed budget will include proposals to impose parking after 8 o'clock in some areas, so I think we are getting there.
Okay, I mean, we've known that those problems aren't new. Those problems have been a data need since 2010. So there are elements here where I just want to daylight here that having a data-driven approach would lead us to different policy conclusions, like implementation of longer extensions of time.
I would say we have followed the data to that extent. So when we started off in 2010, most of the paid parking ended at 6 p.m. We followed the data, saw that in some neighborhoods, that there's not a cliff that goes, that the parking occupancy doesn't fall off a cliff at 5 or 6 p.m. and it keeps going. So we collected more data. Now in most of the parts of the city, we have parking extending till 8 p.m. In places like Pike Pine and Capitol Hill, where it looks like the data continues out, we've started to collect more data out to 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight. And you're right, that's where the data shows there is still a lot of demand, occupancy is still high, and then so following what Ben is describing, those are the next places that we'll go to and look to see if we have access issues. We work with the community, we look at the data and see if we need to extend hours a little further.
At the Seattle Municipal Code,